The analysis of ISD data report has been put together to help move ISDs through their data review process, the gather, study, plan, do section in a much quicker and more efficient way, and also in a more sustainable way so that they have something that can be used and referred to time after time rather than needing an updated PowerPoint each time they enter data review. This report on the first page starts with an overview of the purpose of the report, as well as an overview of the results that can be expected using this report. In the purpose, it's discussed that the idea here is to use a problem-solving and action planning process related to multi-tiered systems of supports, and that an ISD team is going to use 4 sources of data within their data review process. It also lists the 3 critical questions that are going to be worked through within this report. These are the same 3 critical questions we've always used within ISD data review and that are also used within district level data review. The results section here is really just a description of what you see in the graphic. The idea is that within data review, we're going to end up with an ISD MTSS implementation plan that has objectives in these 4 critical MTSS data areas. We know that the fidelity and student outcome is the overarching goal of the work, and that each of these other pieces here helps to make sure that our ISD and our districts have the environments ready that they need to have so that schools can meet those improved fidelity and improved student outcomes. As teams then start to use this process, they'll get into the gather section, and there are a number of bullets here for them to consider. So prior to analyzing data, we need to make sure we've gathered everything. So there's some quick checks here to make sure, do we have our accomplishments and barriers forms from our partnering ISDs, and can we start the day out by sharing those? We want to start with those in the gather section because it gives us some context of what's going on within the school and districts that we're working with. So we want to read out any of those accomplishments and barrier forms, and we don't have to problem solve them yet. And there will be a time later in the day when we get into plan where we come back to those accomplishment and barriers forms. So they're going to be talked about again. But they're a nice way to start the day to know what's going well and to already have in our mind some things that districts may be asking us to problem solve. Then we want them to open the district context tab and make sure all these pieces are accurate. Within your data review process that your teams have done today, this is likely already done, but it's listed here just so that they can get used to the idea that this going to the context tab and starting with making sure we have all of our ducks in a row about who is doing this work, what work is upcoming, that we have all of our data coordination pieces set, but that's all a part of gathering and making sure they're set and ready to look at our data. Then we want to move into determining if there are any updates or changes with the data that we're going to analyze. So we want to make sure they do a quick check with MyBlissy or with whoever they are utilizing to help them gather their data to make sure that there isn't any new data, changes in fidelity measures, changes in student data, changes in who's collecting different data across the ISD, to make sure we know what data do we have available to us and who's collecting that data. Then we move into the study section. We gather our data, and then our first question is, where are we headed with our MTSS work? So our first job is to confirm our measurable objectives within the ISD MTSS implementation plan. As they do this, they can use Table 1, which is on the next page. I'll go to it in just a minute. That Table 1 has data definitions and example objectives to support their work. What they should be doing is check to make sure that each objective is written in their ISD MTSS implementation plan, that they're each written in a smart way. Verify the consensus of their team around the target and timeline for each objective, and make sure they're clear on the rationale if they have a less ambitious goal than what is suggested. So during this section, they would open their ISD MTSS implementation plan and walk through those different objectives. They can use Table 1 here, which has each data piece listed, and then the definition for each data, the assessments that may be a part of that, the target, and some example objectives. Student outcome and fidelity is a little bit more complicated, so there is an appendices with all of the different types of fidelity and assessment, fidelity and student outcome data listed and described. But the rest of the assessments are a little bit easier. For ISD capacity, it's just one piece we're looking at. We can see what the target is, and we can see here what the objective would be. Same for district capacity and for reach. I'll flip down to the appendices right now. In the appendices, there's two tables. The first table has student academic and behavior measures, and it walks through those, the purpose, the criterion score, and when they're assessed. And then same thing here for the fidelity measure. So it gives us some good information right within this document on what assessments are we using for student outcome and fidelity. When I go back up to this table though, keep in mind our example objective, we don't need to write an objective on each and every different type of data piece, especially at the ISD level. Schools are doing that, and districts may have some written around fidelity or written around specific pieces for outcomes. But what we're going to do at the ISD level is think about how many of our schools that we're supporting are hitting that high level of fidelity and high level of student outcome. So how many of our schools, and we want 80% or more in the long run after doing the work with these folks, we want 80% or more of them to be able to hit good fidelity and strong student outcomes. So that's what the ISD example objective would be. As they think about whether or not they're hitting that, they may want to use the appendices to remember what types of data is going into that objective. Okay, so that was question 1A, confirm our objectives. We'll walk through each of those and make sure that we know what we're headed towards. And then go back and review any activities that were previously planned. Update the status of those activities. Make sure that we document any team decisions about reasons why activities were not completed. And then include today's date with that status update. So they should be going through their plan. Their ISD MTSS implementation plan should have space right in it to update their activities on a regular basis. Once they've done that, where are we headed piece, then we want to look into how close are we to getting there. So as we move into question 2, we move away from the plan for a few minutes and we move into the dashboard. So we start with reviewing our plan. Now we move into the dashboard. How close are we to getting there? View the data related to each objective. That's the first piece. So we go objective by objective and make sure we understand where are we with our current data. Dig deeper if we need to into district or school dashboards or any reports that we may need that are offered through My Data. Make sure also as we think about our data, we're considering our training effectiveness data as well and how that relates to our capacity for implementation. We can incorporate any other available ISD related data in this area of the day, but we want to make sure we for sure get through our progress on student outcome and fidelity, ISD capacity, district capacity, and MTSS reach. After we've looked through each of those pieces of data, we then want to think about our summary statements for that data. How are we doing? Are we making progress, staying about the same, or losing ground? Having those nice summary statements are very helpful because they're much easier to share with a leadership, or our executive leadership, or any staff. While we're in this section, we may want to start to consider how are we going to communicate these summary statements. The last piece about how close are we to getting there is we want to think about hypothesis statements for each objective as well. Consider what factors may be contributing to the results and create an if-then statement. We see in Table 2 here an example of a way to organize this study section. This has a lot to do within study. Think about where we are, think about where we want to be. Are we making progress on this each different objective, and what are some hypothesis statements about what we could do to see improvement? What you see here is also included in the PowerPoint as a hidden slide. If you have a district or an ISD that needs some help with how to organize while they're within the study section. This table here is an example. It was modified from something that Copper Country is doing right now to organize during that time. They put tables similar to this right within a Google Doc so that they can share with each other and add to the different notes that are taken while they're going through the study section. Kelly also shared with me that the first way they get through the study section is they break up into groups and different people look at different data. So in small groups, someone looks at the ISD capacity data, someone looks at district data, another group looks at outcome and fidelity, and they fill in their table. Then they come back together and they share out their information, and then they can dig in deeper as a group into the areas that they need to dig in deeper. That's another suggestion as well. Want to really think about how to get through the study section in a way that doesn't overwhelm folks, doesn't make them feel like they're having to capture data in a whole nother location outside of their plan. I see some of these summary like tables included right within plans. Kent ISD includes something similar right within their MTSS implementation plan, where they're regularly capturing, okay, we're studying our data, what do we see right now before they get into planning. So lots of different ways to do this. You want to see what works for your own ISD, but we want to make sure they get through these pieces of reviewing their objectives, making those summary statements, and thinking about a hypothesis statement. After we have that done for each piece of data, I'm sorry, let me do one more piece too. It may work for some folks to go step by step. How far are we? Making summary statements for one after another, and then going back through, and for each piece of data doing a hypothesis statement. Others may work more linear, where they work through each of these pieces. How close are we? What's our target? Or summary statement or hypothesis statement. They may work just with ISD capacity and get all of that done, and then just work with district capacity and get all of that done. It depends on what works for your ISD. I do think it's helpful when they are in the where are we headed to get through all the objectives. Make sure we know where we're headed, make sure that we know what we've said we were going to do, and then we update, did we do the activities we said we were going to do across everything? But when we're studying our data, it may be helpful to just stick with ISD capacity and create that current status summary statement and hypothesis statement. Maybe work a little bit easier for them when you're working on one dashboard at a time. After we have all that completed, our study is done, we really understand our data, then we get into plan. I do want to push for your teams to study all pieces of their data before they get into planning, because they may spend quite a long time planning some certain piece of district capacity and then realize once they get into fidelity and outcomes that there's something at the school level that's really pushing on that district capacity. And so a lot of what they have planned maybe isn't the priority and something else is the priority. So if you get through all of your study first, that helps you, and you have all your summary statements, you have all your hypothesis statements, it helps you to prioritize better as you get into planning. So question 3, will our current work get us there in the designated timeframes and address any barriers related to MTSS implementation? As you're getting into plan, this can be a time to pull back again those district and school accomplishment and barrier scores. They helped frame you as you started this process, but now may be the time to really make sure we plan those pieces, that we address any barriers that we're seeing. We think about accomplishments and how to extend that work. Then, of course, we go through and add any of our own ISD actions and activities that have to be taken. We want to think about those based on our data analysis and our hypothesis statements and make sure that they're very linked to certain objectives. Some of our activities are linked to more than one objective, so you may be able to put that in more than one place or indicate which objectives each activity is really supposed to support. After they're done with the plan and they have a lot of activities written, things that they think are really going to have an impact between now and the end of the school year, then, or we may have some actions that are getting written, activities that are written that are even more long-term than that, and that's great, but make sure that we have some good ideas of where we're headed with our plan. We want to stop and make sure to do this quick check on the essential components of an MTSS implementation plan. Make sure the team looks and sees, is our plan organized and easy to navigate? Are we using this and updating it regularly? Do we have objectives related to all these areas? And are they written in a smart way? And are they linked to activities that are going to be done to address those objectives? So I want to make sure we stop and think about, do we have really a strong plan here? Or is there an area that's not as strong that we either need to continue to work on now or get a subgroup to work on for us? And then move into do. The do section here is taken from what has been consistently a part of our assignments at the end of the day of ISD data review. So every time we come back to data review at the end of the day, we push them to do these pieces. Remember to continue to meet monthly and work on their MTSS implementation plan. Make sure that they're monitoring their progress as they go. Distribute their MTSS updates. They're making sure to communicate with stakeholders. Support the creation and use of coaching service delivery plans. Complete the RCA prior to their next data review. Identify who will attend RIT network meetings and make sure that they have their linking communication protocols up and running. So these are just those consistent things that they need to be working on always as they head out of data review. Of course, they have all their activities as well, but that are individualized to each and every ISD. But these are the big things all of our ISDs need to do. There's 2 additional tables that we haven't addressed yet. Table 3 has accomplishments. So if your ISD needs to, and this should say ISD prior to it, if your ISD needs to capture their own accomplishments and doesn't have a way that they're doing that yet, they may want to use the table here where they can just gather their accomplishments and then circle who do they think that accomplishment should be communicated to. And then we have identified barriers for them as well. As you continue to scroll, it just rolls back into the appendix that we've already talked about, where it goes through each of the different assessments that are being used at the school, district, and mainly school level, the school level. And that's the end of their analysis of ISD report. So you can see how critical it is for the team to make sure that as they get into these different questions, that they really attend to each section, question 2A, 2B, and 2C, and they accomplish everything that they need to accomplish within each of those sections. Because this is a new report and a new way of doing data review, of course, we're looking for lots of feedback. There will be a question in the evaluation part of the day asking teams, but I will be trying to gather lots of feedback from those on the data review pit crews. We have Kelly, Sarah, and Courtney, but anybody else who uses this content, please make sure if you have feedback for me about how this went, being in more of a report format rather than a bunch of team times on a slide, please let me know. I'm interested to see how this goes and what we can do to improve.